For more on China and Europe relations, my colleague Rachelle Akuffo spoke to Sourabh Gupta. He is a senior Asia-Pacific International Relations Policy Specialist with the Institute for China-America Studies. And she started by asking him for his take on Xi Jinping's 4 principles for China and EU relations. Let's take a listen.
Obviously, this year's summit meeting came at a very difficult time in international relations, in terms of globalization, and of course in terms with coronavirus all around us. And so there have been a lot of forces, negative forces floating around, trying to create separation, protectionism, live in our little cubby holes. And obviously it's important that the forces that got us to the point of being prosperous, of being richer, of being interconnected, of being more plural and diversified, those forces need to be supported. And I think that's where President Xi is alluding to. And frankly, that's where I see the Europeans would also, what they cherish and would like to protect is very much similar on the lines of what China is alluding to and heading towards.
And what did you see as any other big takeaways or highlights from the dialogue?
Well, I think there are some big highlights of the dialogue. I thought it was very frank, but it was also constructive. And remember, they are trying to negotiate a comprehensive agreement on investment. This is something which will guide China-EU economic relations for the next 30 years, next 50 years. Many of these are the phase 2 issues over which the US and China stumbled last year. They made tremendous progress on some of the hardest topics. We're talking industrial subsidies, we're talking state-owned enterprises, we're talking coerced technology transfers. These are big steps. There are important steps still remaining on issues like market access, particularly in the telecom sector. But these are big steps and important steps that have been taken. Another important steps I would allude to is just last week they had a high-level digital dialogue. They've kicked off a digital dialogue. There are ample areas where, yes, there are differences, but ample areas of cooperation, and I think they will be fleshing those areas out in the years ahead, but it's important that that dialogue has started.
Now, I do obviously have to point out this was a virtual affair by nature of what's happening with the COVID-19 pandemic. What did we hear about their responses to the pandemic and their cooperation on that front?
It's interesting because the head of the European Commission, von der Leyen, she spoke after the meeting and talked about how important it is that we all get together multilaterally and cooperate with regard to COVID and with regard to the vaccine. China has obviously moved very fast forward on vaccine trials and is in a very good position. She alluded to the fact that China should join that framework where the vaccine can be provided within a multilateral setting to a lot of poorer countries. I think it would be a very important thing for China to do. Yes, there are foreign policy implications, and China did get trapped in that issue of mask diplomacy towards the early part of the year. The fact that China has moved so fast forward on vaccine trials is very promising, and that if it joins this global framework by which the vaccine can be disseminated, I think it would be a great thing. And I think it's very important that the two sides work together on this front, considering the terrible suffering that COVID has caused.
And this is certainly a relationship that's rebalancing. We're seeing the U.S. is also focused on rebalancing its relationship with China. How do you see U.S. politics and the U.S. election influencing the China-EU relationship?
I think it has important implications depending of if President Trump gets reelected or we have a President Biden. If President Trump does get reelected, because multilateralism will be so much greater under pressure, it is that much more important that China and EU work out a constructive engagement and a framework for their long-term relationship, which I think they can do. And of course, if President Biden comes along, he's very much committed on multilateral lines, as the EU and China is, and might actually bring a little positive pressure on China to reform a little quicker on some of these issues which we talked about, like investment and industrial subsidies and state-owned enterprises. And so the US is obviously a huge player out here. Everybody wants the multilateral system to function and work. All the players must be pulling in the right direction, and therefore, regardless of who wins, it is essential that China and EU get their relationship right and pull together in the direction of positive globalization and multilateralism.